Just take a moment to admire the fact I just hit a fairway.
There's only two things that can happen. You can hit a good shot or a bad shot, so why waste time doing it?
And wherever I set course records or whatever, I would be barefooted, drunk, playing golf, making every 20-footer I looked at.
Right at it. Right at it! Oh, Jordan, he's done it again!
This is the dumbest hole I've ever played in my life.
Come on then, Shane. Knock it close. Shane Lowry is the Open champion.
Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Fairway Finders podcast. You might, for our regular listeners, be wondering who's this guy talking at the top of the show. Our good colleague and friend, Brew, can't make it today. So unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to me sitting in the hot seat for the next hour or so. But my God, we have a great show in store for you today. We've one of the top journalists, broadcasters, hosts in golf joining us today on the show. But the one guy that is a standalone is the darling of Dublin. It's Donncha McCormack. How are you, Donncha?
I wish I was as good at snooker as the real darling of Dublin. Shout out to Ken Doherty, the man himself. Yeah, so guys, this is a great episode. Honestly, you're going to really enjoy this. So we hooked up with Jason Sobel, who has been a golf writer for, a couple of decades, really at the top end of it. We talked all things Ryder Cup, and what we got out of it, which was so great, is we are kind of existing a little bit in our little European team echo chamber. And we got his perspective on lots of things in terms of pairings, in terms of how he thinks it's going to go, in terms of how Whistling Straits is going to play. That's all great stuff. There's betting angles, but then even more to that, there are some absolutely blindingly good stories. We have had such fun with Jason. It was such a pleasure to have him on to give us his time. There's one particular story about Phil Mickelson that just please go and listen to it because it's absolutely gas. You're going to really enjoy this podcast. Like I had a great time. That was a really fun conversation.
100%, yeah. And obviously thanks to Jason for coming on and giving us his time. He's a busy man, if you can tell by the interview we did with him. I think the one thing that stands out for myself is just how down to earth the guy is. You know, very good guy, very genuine guy, and they say that Irish are great storytellers, but my God, Jason is definitely a storyteller, and I'm sure you'll hear that throughout the interview today. So we hope you enjoy what you're about to hear with Jason Sobel.
This is more than just a game.
It's quite simple. I just love it. I love the Ryder Cup.
I had a few thoughts for my friend Sevi, and this one is for him.
Christy O'Connor, second to the 18th. He's got the right club.
How about that?
He wants it.
Is he going to hit it like that? No. Oh my goodness, folks.
For me, it's been a career-long goal to get the Ryder Cup.
I live for the Ryder Cup. That's why I'm here, and I will deliver a point.
So yeah, the Fairway Finders podcast this week, we're doing things a little bit differently given the week that's in it, Ryder Cup week. I know it's my favourite week of the year, and Donnie, I think you're of a similar frame of mind. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to have a couple of shorter podcasts, and we're going to get some special guests on with us to preview the Ryder Cup and talk about some bets for the week as well. So in terms of special guests, I think it's fair to say we've gone right to the top shelf of special guests this week. So our guest today, he's a highly respected golf journalist, formerly of the Golf Channel and ESPN, and he's now writing some great stuff for the Action Network. He's a broadcaster, and he's currently the host of the Sirius XM PGA Tour radio show. And from what I understand, he likes a bet or two on golf every now and then. Jason Sobel, welcome to the show.
Steve Donica, thanks so much for the nice intro. Every once in a while, I have been known to bet on golf just a little bit. I keep losing money when I bet on myself. I'm just off the golf course 10 minutes ago, and that didn't go well for like a third straight day. So I got to keep it to the PGA Tour guys instead of betting on me.
Well, we know that. I mean, Emiliano Grillo, we know that he's going to run good. He's going to run hot this week. He started okay. He's in the mix at the fortnight. He's yours to start.
It'd be nice to start off the season with something good. I mean, it's a long season. I get it. By September of next year, no one's going to remember that in September of this year we started off. But it'd just be nice to like start off with a good one. You know,
it's just a dream. And if you get one up early, you'll just spend an extra hour each week in the PGA Tour stats digging in. It's just great to get the momentum started. So yeah, fingers crossed this week goes well.
Yeah, so I like him a lot this week. Started off okay, and we'll see what's going on. As we're recording here on Thursday evening. I mean, half the field hasn't even finished their first round yet. So I try not to look too far ahead. It's like, well, let's get to like Saturday and we'll start looking at the leaderboard. I try not to, get too excited or too pessimistic either way the first couple of days, but we'll see what's going on.
You can only lose it on a Thursday. You can only lose on Thursday.
Exactly.
You sound like Tiger.
Greatest compliment I've ever heard in my entire life.
That's his nickname, Jason. That's his nickname. Tiger, we call him.
Yeah, don't ask me to drive anywhere.
There you go. Right off the bat, he comes in with that kind of stuff.
We adore Tiger, of course.
So, Jason, obviously, look, we appreciate you coming on, and it's great to have you on the Fairway Finders. So, for the Ryder Cup this week, obviously, as a US perspective on it, how are you feeling overall? Are you confident? Are you a little bit apprehensive, or what are the thoughts going into the Ryder Cup this / next week?
Okay, so first of all, I consider myself a journalist, and even though yes, I am an American, in case listeners out there couldn't tell, I don't necessarily have a rooting interest. I tell people this all the time. People don't seem to understand that when you're a journalist and you're trying to stay impartial and objective, I really don't care. And I know that sounds terrible. And honestly, what we do as journalists, we root for the story. And right. I tend to think the better story this time around might be the U.S. winning. And I can only imagine the calls that we're going to get on our PGA Tour radio show next week and for the next 2 years if the U.S. lays another egg and Europe just dominates them this time again, because people are going to be mad and they're going to want changes and they're going to want to do everything completely different. And sometimes it just comes down to, well, one team played better than the other. But I think just to even things out, the better story might be the U.S. winning. But as far as me personally, I'm very confident that I'm going to get through the week. I'll be just fine by Monday of next week after this thing is over. But as far as the U.S., I think the U.S. is way too heavy of a favorite. I mean, how often can we do this? Every 2 years, it's the U.S. is the better team on paper. The U.S. is a huge favorite. And Europe comes in and shows that games aren't played on paper and the matches are way closer than it seems. So I'm actually very shocked that the U.S. is such a favorite from the bookmakers so far, although that really reflects what the public is betting on right now. So if the public's going to bet with their hearts instead of their heads, then they're going to bet on the U.S. I have a preview coming out in the next couple of days before I leave for Whistling Straits, where I say, look, I'd like the U.S. to win. I don't love them to win. I don't like them enough to bet them at minus 225 or whatever it is right now in the books. It's just a ridiculous number, I think. But what we've found over the last handful of years is that the European team has been better, first of all, in the team matches and especially in the foursomes matches. They're playing foursomes on Friday morning, four balls, of course, Friday afternoon, foursomes Saturday morning. And I think that maybe you find a nice little number Saturday afternoon, kind of early in the four balls matches where Europe might be leading by 3 points or so. And the U.S. might be able to get one or two back in those four balls. And you start looking at it, you say, okay, well, now it's back down to even. Maybe now even the U.S. is plus money. And I think you can wait on it. And quite frankly, guys, and we've been doing this on our radio show, we've been doing it on the Action Network, talking about the pairings for so long. And I know we'll probably get into it as well. And it's fun. It's intriguing. It's fun. Who's going to play with who? What does it mean? What matchups do you want to see? 8 of the last 9 Ryder Cups, guys, have come down to the team that won Sunday singles, that had more points in the Sunday singles session, won the Ryder Cup. So, I mean, we can get into like, who's Bryson going to play with? How are they going to pair together? What does it mean? Quite frankly, we're going to go into Sunday at Whistling Straits, and it's going to be tied, or one team's going to be leading by 1 or 2, and it's going to be really close. And the team that plays better on Sunday in the singles matches is going to win this thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think agreed on this side anyway. So a question to throw to you, Jason, and you mentioned that it's going to come down to the Sunday match play. So just to get your thoughts on Steve Stricker's, more so on the captain's picks that he's made for the event this week. So I'm going to throw a point at you, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it. So the last 2 WGC match play event winners, Kevin Kisner and Billy Horschel, not selected for the team. And the top point scorer for the US in 2 of the last 3 Ryder Cups, who is, of course, Patrick Reed, hasn't been selected for the team. So can I ask you overall, Jason, has Stricker got it right with his captain's picks?
I love this debate. This is sort of like us sitting here debating who was the greatest of all time, Tiger or Jack? Because you know what? We'd sit here for 2 hours and there wouldn't be a right or a wrong answer. And it makes for great podcast fodder because we can go back and forth on this. And you guys can say one thing and I can say something completely different. And there's no conclusion to it, which means that the argument keeps going on and on and on. This argument should, in effect, end next Sunday when they finish this thing. And we can look back and say, Scotty Scheffler went 4-0. That was absolutely the right pick to put him as a captain's pick. Or he goes 0-4 and we go, what was he doing? Or he goes 0-1 and doesn't play for the first 2 days. We go, why was he even on the team if he wasn't going to play the first 2 days? I don't know the answer to it yet. I can sit here and say, I can tell you this much. First of all, speaking with Steve Stricker during his press conference a little bit and listening to what he had to say when he made those captain's picks, I like the fact that he's looking more at how the course fits certain players as opposed to history in this type of format or history in the Ryder Cup. We do this every week. You guys are betting on golf. You guys understand this, where every week we go, all right, well, the course is this. Silverado is a 7,100 yard par 72. You got to shoot about 20 under to win. So it takes a guy that makes a lot of birdies. You got to keep it in the fairway there. Okay, let's find guys who fit the golf course. Well, all of a sudden we get to the Ryder Cup and go, I don't know about that course stuff. Give me the gritty, gutty guy who's going to win some match. Wait, what happened to the other 51 weeks a year where we talk about course fit and we think that makes so much sense to make our bets geared towards the guys that fit the golf course? And Steve Stricker has done that. He's talked to an analytics team and figured out who fits this golf course the best. I understand, and I was an advocate of, hey, let's be creative. Let's think out of the box. But I think it's really difficult if Steve Stricker calls up Harris English and says, look, I know you won twice this year. I know you've played really well. In fact, you've probably played too well. We're going to pick somebody that's further back because we want to think outside the box. We want to be a little different. You know what? In fact, Harris, if you had played a little bit worse, we might think about you and we might put you on the team because that would be more out of the box than putting you on the team after you played so well. That's a really, really kind of weird way of thinking about it. But I can't find any fault in these guys. And I get it that, okay, Harris English and Scotty Scheffler might not excite people too much, but quite frankly, they're some of the best players in the world. The U.S. team has 12 of the top 21 in the world. Three of these guys that were captain's picks, Spieth, Xander, and Finau. I think it's almost impossible to knock their selections. I think we all knew they were going to be on the team weeks, even months earlier. And Daniel Berger is a guy, and I've been asked this question a lot too, like who's going to be sort of, the guy that gets the crowd going, the guy that, is the fiery type player. We saw Anthony Kim back in 2008 really get everybody fired up. We saw Patrick Reed do it as Captain America. I think the one player that could do it for the U.S. team, and granted, it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. You can't get the crowd fired up if you're 0-3 and you're playing really badly. But if you're playing well, the guy that I think is a lot fiery and a lot more cocky and a lot more fun to watch than American fans really understand is going to be Daniel Berger. I'm expecting a big week from him.
Oh, that's
interesting.
So from my perspective, and I entirely agree. If I put myself in Steve Stricker's shoes and I take into account the length of Whistling Straits, I think he's got it right. I would have been a lot more worried. I would have been worried to see Kevin Na. Kevin Na, obviously recent form, very good. And his ability to be a little bit odd and a little bit unorthodox walking in putts. Like you can imagine a roar of a crowd if he walks in a 10-footer to win a hole or to win a match. The length of Whistling Straits maybe is what might have put paid to his notion. But it's the thing that worries me from a European perspective is you've got eight of the American team rank in the top 50 for driving distance on the PGA Tour. I'm assuming they're going to cut the rough down next week because you're going to want to see holes won with birdies rather than having a US Open kind of setup. And on the European side, only 4 would rank. So, from a European perspective, there's probably concerns about a couple of guys. Don't need to name them, and I'm sure that they are raring to go. And I'm sure that as European teams do, that they're going to perform. But this is a huge challenge for a European team. And I think to go to your point at the top of the show, Jason, about maybe the better story is for the US to actually get it done. So I agree. And the story is what the essence of the Ryder Cup, that this has been for the last, 9 events, 7 of the last 9, it's tended to be David has slayed Goliath in terms of world rankings, in terms of major championships. And we've obviously fed on that for a long time. But I do think some of the perceived cracks in the US team in terms of, and I'd love to get your perspective on Koepka's recent comments and Bryson's long drive. It would actually be a story because they are favourites, and on paper they should be favourites, but there's a huge question mark over the I suppose the team mentality.
Okay, so a few things to address there. First of all, again on the captain's picks, and I seem to think that a lot of people don't understand this. We're trying to find who is right, who is wrong. Should it have been Kevin Na or should it have been Scotty Scheffler? Should it have been Patrick Reed or Harris English? And the point that I would make is, look, I get it. These are tough choices, but it's a really good thing that there are more than 12 players who are worthy of being on the team. Donica, before we started, you mentioned being at the K Club in 2006. I was there as well. That U.S. team had Brett Wederick. They had J.J. Henry. They had Vaughn Taylor. There were not 12 American players who were fit to play on a Ryder Cup team. It wasn't a good team. There just wasn't that much talent. And, I don't think there's anyone that would dispute that, except maybe those 3 guys that I just named. And hopefully, Brett, apologies to Brett Wederick if you're listening right now. I mean no offense.
The team picture. Sorry to interrupt, Jason. The team picture during the week I found absolutely hilarious. That Brett is almost asking should he be in the shot. He's about 2.5 feet away from the rest of the team, standing out to the sides.
And JJ Henry's a regular listener to the podcast, so he's going to be very, very disappointed.
I love JJ Henry, Connecticut's own JJ Henry. Love that guy. But good for him for getting onto a Ryder Cup team. Think about that now. I mean, think about if JJ Henry, Vaughn Taylor, and Brett Wederick, who really had one good month. He played pretty well in a couple of events in Texas that year in 2006 and got onto the Ryder Cup team. Think about if those 3 guys were having pretty good seasons on the PGA Tour this year. They're going to be 47th on the list for Steve Stricker of guys who we might think about picking. The American talent is much greater right now than it was. And I would say the same thing about the European talent. I mean, 10 years ago, Justin Rose being Justin Rose right now wasn't being left off a European Ryder Cup team. And the fact that there are that many good players, again, it's a really good thing. There's a lot of talent. And, I've said this about Kevin Na as far as, look, 3 years ago, when you're going to Le Golf National at Paris, and it's a shorter, tighter course, one where you're not hitting a lot of greens in regulation, you need a guy who's got a great wedge game around the greens, like a Kevin Na. Okay, I would probably consider him a little more heavily than I would have this year. Sometimes life sucks, and sometimes you play your best golf of your career in a Ryder Cup year where the Ryder Cup course doesn't fit your game. And you know what? Is it fair? Maybe, maybe not. It's just the way life works. And it would have been great for Kevin Na to have this kind of year 3 years ago, and he could have gotten on the 2018 Ryder Cup Cup team maybe, but he didn't. And this is what happened. And he's, they're playing at a much longer golf course, and it doesn't necessarily fit him. All right. So as far as the team mentality of the US, I've always struggled with this because I think we're grasping at something. We're grasping at reasons and explanations to figure out why Europe has played so much better than the US for so many years. And a lot of it comes down to, well, they've just played better. I think it means more to the Europeans. I was in Paris 3 years ago, and I had some friends who go to the Ryder Cup every year, and said, "Oh, come out to a bar with us afterwards." And we go out to a bar 6, 7, 8 hours after the Ryder Cup is finished, and we walk in, and there are people standing on tables and singing at the top of their lungs songs about Francesco Molinari and Tommy Fleetwood and Sergio Garcia. And it was great. It was a wonderful atmosphere. They could have been nicer to a few Americans who walked in and they're buying us pints, and we had a great time. What happens in America is when the U.S. team wins the Ryder Cup, everyone goes, yes. Okay, what's on the 4:00 football games?
Yeah.
And that's just sort of the mentality is we kind of move on to the next thing really quickly. And I get that people are going to go, man, I'd be really pissed off if the U.S. team doesn't win this year. Trust me, and you guys understand this. You're probably not going to be as pissed off as Europeans would be if the European team doesn't win. I think it means a little more. We saw Brooks Koepka's statements, and I kind of get that. I mean, I will defend Brooks Koepka on this. The fact that 51 weeks out of the year, he's a lone wolf. He's been coached and taught to step on the throats of every other PGA Tour player out there. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter if you're friends with them. If you don't like them, you're supposed to go out there and beat the crap out of these guys. And then 1 week out of the year, you're supposed to hang out in the team room, be best friends with them, go out and play golf with them and have a great time. And that's not necessarily the mentality. That said, I always look at it very much analogous to baseball in that, okay, the pitcher has to get along with the catcher. That probably has to work. That has to be a good relationship. Does the pitcher need to get along with the left fielder? Not really. Doesn't really matter. The pitcher does his job. The left fielder does his job. If they don't really hang out in the team room and have a beer together every night, you don't really care. As long as they all do their job and, kind of works together. I don't think that the camaraderie between everybody necessarily needs to be there. And that said, I think they're going to put it aside. I mean, look, I've heard all this stuff about like, what's Bryson going to do? Nobody likes Bryson. They'll find a guy. I think Tony Finau would be a good partner for Bryson. Tony Finau gets along with everybody. Put him in 4 balls. Let him just go mash it off the tee and go find it and hit it again and try to make as many birdies as they can and have fun doing that together. And I think those guys would have a good time. And again, you just don't worry too much about it. Brooks and Bryson aren't getting in a fight in the team room. There's not going to be guys that dislike each other. Quite frankly, you look at those 6 captains picks on the American side, Jordan, Tony, Xander, Daniel Berger, Harris English, and Scotty Scheffler. Find somebody that doesn't like any one of those guys. It's really hard to do. Those are 6 really likable players.
And I think what's different, I think the fact that half of the US team this year are rookies is a major advantage, because we know even if you go to the degree of Tiger's record in the Ryder Cup, Phil's record in the Ryder Cup, Jim Furyk's record in the Ryder Cup, there's probably a fair amount of scars that maybe less so for Tiger and Phil, admittedly, but the fact that there is a freshness in the US team, I see as a massive advantage. And you also have, you have a 2-time major champion making his Ryder Cup debut. Like, he's not going to be phased. Colin Morikawa is not going to be phased. I'd be interested to know actually who you put with Colin Morikawa. You'd probably want a guy who puts the lights out, and you've got a hell of a foursome team there.
So I have got it down where Steve Stricker's job could be very, very easy as far as the pairings over the next week. I think until they just don't play well together, until they run out of steam, until they lose momentum, I keep throwing JT and Spieth out together, who we know want to play together.
Guaranteed.
Just and it's not even about wins or losses. Look, if they take a match to 18 and Rory and Lee Westwood play really well together and just happen to beat them 1-up, okay, you know what? That's not terrible. Sometimes losses aren't necessarily because you played really poorly. And then again, they could go out there and win, and they just win because the other team's making bogeys all over the place, and they're not really doing a whole lot to help themselves. And you say, okay, maybe they need to be sat, at least one of them. But as long as there's some sort of momentum, as long as there's some gas in the tank, I've got JT and Spieth together for 4. And then I've got Xander and Patrick Cantlay together for 4. Those guys get along really well. They're 2 of the best players in the world. Just throw them out there and let them do their thing. And again, same thing until the point where you see one or both of those guys lose that momentum, lose that energy, and it might not happen. You hope it doesn't happen. If you're Steve Stricker, you throw them out there for 4 matches. What that does is basically cut your workload in half. Now all of a sudden you only need to find 2 other partnerships for the other 4 sessions. So the way I've got it, and I mentioned Bryson with Fee now for 4 balls. I like DJ with Scotty Scheffler for 4 balls. I've got Koepka and Berger, the 2 Florida State guys, for foursomes. Koepka, look, I get that he says he's healthy right now, but foursomes probably makes more sense in that you only have to hit half the shots over the course of a full day. So Koepka essentially plays 9 holes each of the first 2 days, and it's a nice way of getting him in the mix without really putting him in too much danger as far as his wrist. And then essentially left over the 2 nicest guys on the team in Colin Morikawa and Harris English, who should get along pretty well. I get that maybe it's a little bit of a mismatched pair, but at some point you say, hey, you 2 guys, go out there and play well together.
I mean, it's less so of the chemistry is less so of a factor in 4 balls anyway. Go out there and make a ton of birdies, and see where you end up. Which is why I want John Rahm to play with Victor Hovland in the 4 balls, because I just think they are just 2 absolute birdie machines.
I have more questions about the European teams, and maybe I just haven't read up on it enough. But I'm very interested to see if Harrington, first of all, is he going to sort of front load everything where it's like, okay, you would think Rahm, Rory, Hovland are probably getting 5 matches apiece, but are you going to do you try to hide and I quite honestly, I don't even think he needs to be hidden because I think he's a very good player, but a Bernd Wiesberger who just made the team last week, do you try to keep him to maybe 1 team match before you get to the singles? Do you just kind of throw him out there early and get him with it? Do you take the rookies and try to put them with guys who are more established? Or do you say, let me get some firepower and throw Rahm and Rory together and just go, let's get this point and make sure our big guns go get it? I'm very interested in the European team. I actually think it's harder to put them together than it is the US team this year.
It is, yeah. And that's usually the case as well. And that's where Harrington's going to earn his money one way or the other. So looking at the European team, obviously we have the power. I think John Rahm is almost a certainty to play all 5 days. You got your Hovlands, you got your the rest of them. But if you look at some of the people that are coming into it this year, you got Shane Lowry, who got a captain's pick, who's been playing, in my opinion, he's been playing brilliant over in the US, and going to a place like Whistling Straits isn't going to intimidate him. So I think you'll see a lot of Shane Lowry this week. Donnie, in terms of pairings for European 4 balls, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to happen from
for me, and I've relatively strong feelings about this. I think Rory and Shane should play 4 balls together. I think you need to keep Rory and Rahm.
Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you need to keep Rory and John Rahm separate because you need that elite ball striking element across the team. But who I'd love to see Rory play foursomes with, which he's done before really successfully, is Ian Poulter. That's you've got a guy who makes a lot of putts. You've got a guy who hits a lot of incredible golf shots, and I think they're a bit of a dream team. So I'd have Rory with Shane in the 4 balls. I'd have him with Poulter in the foursomes. I'd like to see, in terms of, and I agree, I don't think you need to hide Bernd Wiesberger at all. So I had the pleasure of watching a lot of the BMW last week, and Wiesberger was struggling a bit with his swing on Friday and just found a way to make the cut, and then kicked on and qualified at a canter in the end. He showed a lot of bottle. I'd like to see him with maybe a Sergio Garcia. I think blend the experience with someone who's new coming into the team. The ones that for me you need to potentially like hide are just guys out of form. I worry about Tyrrell Hatton. I worry about Matty Fitz. I worry to the lesser extent about Lee Westwood, given his experience. But
Tommy Fleetwood as well, Donnie. He's been playing some just worrying golf for a guy that was an elite player a couple of years ago, and he just seems to have lost a bit of form. So there's 3-4 names that we're a little bit worried about.
It's very difficult.
Beside the pond.
It's going to be very difficult for Harrington, I think. Less so in the foursomes. I think foursomes are going to be Europe's strength. They kind of traditionally always have been. And then, I'm very hopeful that we're going to get a really competitive Ryder Cup. Like the Solheim Cup a couple of weeks ago was just phenomenal viewing. I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. The entire week was so much fun. It was so competitive, and even on the Sunday there was a moment where the Americans were turning the tide again, and it still looked with like 5 matches to go as if it could be a 14 all. It could be 14.5, 13.5. So I think if we can have a week where there are 5 matches left on the course and no one knows who's going to win the Ryder Cup, I think that'll be amazing.
I would be very surprised if this thing is a blowout in either direction.
Yeah.
I like some of those pairings a lot. It's funny. I'm working, guys, on this sort of best case scenario, worst case scenario for every player on both teams. And it's funny, you mentioned some of these names, and it's very easy to see a clear picture of both scenarios. Tommy Fleetwood's a great example. Tommy Fleetwood, best case scenario, he finds his new Molinari. He goes out there and plays just like he did 3 years ago, and he thrives in the Ryder Cup situation and plays some of his best golf. And the worst case scenario is he looks kind of ordinary, just like he has for the last couple of years. And you're kind of wondering, why is Tommy even out there? You know, he just hasn't been the world-class player that he was a couple of years ago. And so you can go up and down the list from every single player on both teams and look at it from those perspectives and go, yeah, I could absolutely see the scenario where this guy goes 4-0, 5-0. I could also see the scenario where he goes 0-4, 0-5 when it just doesn't happen for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that subject, Jason, in terms of we're looking at point scorers and who's going to go 5-0, who's going to go 4-0. If we're looking from a purely betting perspective, it'd be interesting to get your take maybe on who's going to be top point scorer for the US team and who you think who's going to be top point scorer for the European team as well.
Steve, thanks for asking. I've actually written this up in my preview already, so I'm ready to go with this stuff. All right. I have got first of all, I think it makes sense that you're looking at guys who are going to play at least 4, if not 5 matches. You can sit here right now and say, I think Harris English is going to play awesome this week, and I pick him to have the most points. Well, it's really going to be really hard to get 5 points when you only play 3 matches. So I'm not exactly sure how you're going to pull that off. So I'm looking at guys that I think are going to play the full amount of matches. Now, from a betting perspective, you might want to fade the guys. John Rahm was plus 375. At one point, it was plus 300 to win the Fortinet Championship that he's playing in this week on the PGA Tour. He's plus 325 to be the low point scorer for the European team next week. It's essentially the same odds to win a 150-man field out in Napa as it is to beat 11 other teammates as far as the most points next week. That makes no sense whatsoever. In any case, I'm not chasing that number for Rahm next week. So from the European side, a name that Donica, you mentioned earlier, Victor Hovland, I think he's got the firepower. The one issue that we've seen from Hovland over the last couple of years is he can blow up and make a big number when he's in contention. He can go out there and go 6 birdies and 7 holes and all of a sudden throw a quadruple bogey out there. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how did you just turn into me when you're playing some world-class golf? But in match play, of course, that doesn't matter as much. And it matters even less when you've got a partner, especially in 4 balls, where you just go, all right, put me down for an X. Let's go to the next one. And so I think Victor's going to have a really good week. I can see him putting up 3.5, 4 points for the European side. And for the Americans, again, the top is a little bit tighter, but I'm going to fade JT. I'm going to fade Cantlay just a little bit. I mean, not like I don't like those guys because I do, but I think Xander Schauffele is a guy that is going to prove that he is one of the best players in the world. He did it during the Olympics. I've talked to so many players over the last few years who go, you know what, like take nothing away from John Rahm. And I think John Rahm has established that he is the he is the absolute number 1 player in the world right now, and he deserves it. But Xander Schauffele, if we do this podcast a year from now on this very day, I would be very surprised if Xander Schauffele isn't at least 3, if not 2 on that world ranking. He is that good. I think he's starting to prove it to a lot of people. And I think he's going to start coming out on top in a lot of these events where he's coming close, especially those major championships. So I like him to have a really big week this week.
Yeah. So the whole Xander element is, I don't doubt it either. Like, he's an incredible golfer and he did show it at the Olympics, but I've been a little bit cavalier in kind of knocking Xander down for just the last couple of years and his inability to get over the line in a lot of different situations. And I know he says like the wind just changed direction at 16 at Augusta, and but I mean, I hope that I think he probably does have major titles in him, but you never like seeing, at least in the last couple of years, you never like seeing a top golfer kind of struggle with the the grasping that opportunity to win. So, like, I think he'll do great this week. He'll probably play 4. He might miss a session. He may play 5. Because I mean, he's a hell of a player. But do you think he's got some majors in him then, Jason? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, 2 things in rebuttal to this. First of all, we don't sit here on the podcast and talk about the guy that came in 47th place. So the fact that he's putting himself in those positions to win, even though he's not winning, I hate the fact, and I do it all the time. Look, I'm in golf media. I'm on the radio all the time. I'm writing pieces. Like it's easier to be critical of the guy who comes really close and finishes in second place than it is to the guy who finishes at 11:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So, which never really makes sense. I mean, we wouldn't do it in another sport. In another sport, if a team in football, a team goes 13-3 and reaches the conference championship game, we don't look at them and say, well, they're worse than the team that went 3-13. No, you kind of understand the hierarchy of it. But in golf, we tend to criticize the guys more who come close and don't win. The other part of this is that I always look at it as coming close and having that experience is a bigger positive than not coming close at all. And some players don't necessarily need it. Colin Morikawa has not needed those experiences in his career. He hasn't needed, hey, let me finish in 7th in a major, and then 3rd, and then 2nd, and then 2nd again. And then, hey, I finally broke through and figured out how to win and figured out that I can do it. Some other players have needed that. Phil Mickelson needed a ton of experience being in the hunt at major championships. I'm not, I'm old enough to remember when we sat there and said, do you ever think Phil's going to win a major championship? It was like, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I remember those days. Yeah.
He's got 6 of them now. And so, I think it's really easy in the middle of it to say, I don't know if this guy necessarily has what it takes, but I do really believe in Xander's game. And Phil's one of the guys who's told me that, Xander's as good as anybody else out there. I've spoken to some other players who have played not only competitive rounds with him, but sort of just fun, money games with Xander. And they're like, dude, you watch him play and you're like, he's really, really, really good. I hear the same thing about Patrick Cantlay on a regular basis too. Now, I still think that Jon Rahm's the best player in the world. And when I talk ceiling about Xander and Patrick, as I did earlier, I try to limit them to, I think he could be the second best player in the world because I don't really see anyone upending Rahm anytime soon. I just think he is head and shoulders above the rest of the competition right now. But for those 2 guys especially, and I throw Justin Thomas in there as well, I think that ceiling right now over the next year, 2, 3 years is number 2, number 3 in the world.
Music to my ears, Jason. I've been a pro Xander guy ever since we started recording this podcast. Me and Donnie have gone clashing heads a little bit. I've been pro Xander, trying to stick up for him as much as I can.
There you go.
Donnie's been in the
call it a colourful, well-natured, well-mannered debate, Steve.
Exactly, yeah. A sophisticated debate between two golf men, basically, Donnie, isn't it?
Exactly.
Jason, do you know what? You mentioned Phil Mickelson there, and I know there's a very good story since we're a golf betting podcast. I know there's a story going around about you and Phil Mickelson having somewhat of a wager. Any chance you can tell us the full story?
Which
to
one?
Our listeners? Which one? I hear there's
how can I limit my Phil Mickelson stories? You want me to give you the top 10 list?
Do you know what?
I'll still leave some on the cutting room floor.
we'll say. Do you know what? We'll save half for next time. But why don't you give us number 1? What's your number 1? Jason Sobel, Phil Mickelson betting story.
This was at Quail Hollow in 2015, I believe, 2014, 2015, something like that. Myself and 2 other writers went out during the Wednesday Pro-Am. By the way, if you ever go to a tournament and you're covering it as part of the media and you'd like to go speak with some players, go find them on the back 9 of a Pro-Am, because that's when they really don't care at their most. And they're like, they see us coming. Usually they see us come. They're like, oh man, let me run in the other direction. They see you coming. And all of a sudden you go from the enemy to the friend, because they're like, I could either hang out with these Pro-Am guys for 3 more holes, or I can hang out with my media friends. So, but Phil, I joke about that. Phil's always been great with us. And so we go to walk a couple of holes with Phil during the Pro-Am, just really not even working, just kind of like, hey, let's go hang out. The media center was right next to the 16th hole. I remember we went out to the 16th tee box and we start walking. Phil goes, hey, are you guys coming on Saturday night? And we go, no idea what you're talking about. So I rented out this little tavern down the street. We're gonna have like 50, 60 people, players, caddies, some media guys. We're gonna have like NHL, NBA playoff games, and then there was a fight that night. God, what was it? Like a Pacquiao fight? I can't remember. There was some big fight. Give me a big boxer from like 6 years ago.
Pacquiao Mayweather.
Yeah, it was definitely a Mayweather fight. Man, I don't know if it was against Pacquiao. I'm not a big boxing guy. It was something we were all excited to be like, sure, cool, sounds good. We get there that night. Phil happens to be tied for the third round lead. And we're like, are we still doing this thing? He's like, yeah, of course. Come on over. It's perfect. I have a late tee time. So, we can stay up and watch. Great. Okay. We go over there. Just like you said, 50, 60 guys milling about. We're sitting there and Phil's sipping on some red wine at the bar, nothing crazy. And we're all just kind of, have a beer and hang out. And, it really was just a very relaxed, chill kind of evening. So before the first fight of the undercard starts, Phil stands up in front of the room and says, hey, I don't want to make any big speeches, but I just want to say thank you everyone for coming. Everything's on me tonight. The staff here is great. They'll take care of you. Anything you need, just ask. And oh, by the way, we have the first fight of the undercard coming up, and wagering is encouraged. Thanks, Phil. And I think there might have been like one bet on the first undercard fight because who knows it's the welterweight, whatever, and no one knows what's going on. So there's a fight. We're barely paying attention. We're talking, hanging out a little bit. And all of a sudden Phil stands up in front of the room. He said, look, I said I wouldn't make another speech, but we now have this fight. It's the light flyweight title bout between the title holder, who's 39-0 with 32 knockouts, and this young kid who's 20 years old. He's 11-7 with 4 knockouts, and he's a big underdog tonight, but I just like this kid. There's something about this kid, and I will take even money if anyone would like to bet with me. Well, immediately there are 60 arms raised in the air, throwing money at Phil, saying, yeah, give me 100, give me 200, give me 300. Myself, I was in for 100, thinking, and not thinking very much because all it would have taken was a very quick Google search, but thinking, hey, if I win, I got some of Phil's money. I'm going to make him sign it and say, I lost a bet to you. And I'm going to go frame it. And if I lose, I paid $100 to hang out and have dinner and drinks. And that's about what I would have paid anyway. So, I could even expense it to the company. So it was a win-win situation, really. So the fight starts, and it was very apparent very early that Phil's guy was going to win. And Phil knew Phil's guy was going to win, to the point where I wonder aloud right now whether Phil on Wednesday knew exactly what Phil was doing, which was, I'm going to invite everyone there. I am going to bet everyone on the underdog. I'm going to take everyone's money, and then I'm going to pay for the entire night using their money. And then they're going to walk out and shake my hand and say, thanks, Phil. Really appreciate you having us here. And that's exactly what happened.
He is a master. How is Phil Mickelson not ruler of the world?
He's the best.
He's
the
best.
Phil Mickelson, he made more money. He made more money that night than he did when he won the PGA Championship last year. So
I've done the math on it, and I honestly think that I want to throw a number out there, but he probably made in the neighborhood of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more than the night would have cost to rent out the whole place.
Profit.
I'm sure, and to give Phil credit, because I don't want to make this sound like Phil's stealing everyone's money. To give him credit, he probably took that money and some extra money and tipped out the entire staff because he's a very big tipper and very generous. But the whole thing was basically a wash where he got a free night and everyone had to say, what a great guy Phil is.
That's amazing.
So much fun.
I'd imagine about like 50 and 20% of Phil's week is him making, the Leonardo DiCaprio meme of him in Django where he's like, Phil's probably just making that face morning, noon, and night.
So I've got a caddy bib right behind me there from when I caddied for Brendan Steele. Just over 3 years ago, the BMW Championship. Sunday, it was week 1 of the NFL season. Sunday's final round was washed out. They were going to go to Monday. Brendan Steele's a very good friend of mine. We've become friendly over the years, and I just happened to be in the right place or the wrong place at the wrong time. And he was talking to his caddy, Christian Donald, and Christian had been away from home for 6 or 7 weeks, and he was, sort of a lame duck round. Steele was nowhere near the top of the leaderboard, and he couldn't move on to the Tour Championship even if he shot 42 the next day. So it didn't matter. And so he said to Kristen, go home. Don't change your flight for me. I'll find someone to carry the bag for 18 holes. And then he looked at me and said, you want to carry it? Go, sure. Yes. Okay. We're really doing this? Yeah. Monday, Monday finish. So it was a Monday finish. And of course, Phil Mickelson winds up being in our group. It was Brian Harmon and Phil Mickelson. Well, we start walking with Phil, and Phil knows what I do, and looking at the betting markets all the time and betting advice. And we start talking betting, and Phil came up with a bet that's actually very relevant this coming week. Which don't tell anyone this, but the Super Bowl champion always starts out on Thursday, of course, and they always play well and they win. Then they have about 10 days off, and week 2. They never cover the spread. I said, okay, Phil, whatever. Okay, cool. Thanks. Whatever. It turns out, Phil, that bet had been like 22-3 in the 25 previous years.
No way.
Phil had figured this thing out.
Wow.
And the very next week it was, and I can't remember if it was, what was that? Patriots, Chiefs. I can't remember who it was coming off that year, but the bet the very next week, he nailed it. And it was like, yeah, he knew exactly what he was talking about.
So you're telling me to back the Falcons against the
kind of the moral of the story right there. Falcons plus 13.
There you go. Tip for
the
listeners.
Team usually the Super Bowl winner goes on the road for the second week, so there's a little difference there, but still, it's Falcons plus 13.
I mean, I'm sold.
Yeah,
blame Phil if it doesn't work.
100%. Yeah, Phil's always to blame by the sounds of it. Can I ask as well, Jason, the whole gambling coming into the world of golf, and I've heard a good interview with you on with Kevin Kisner talking about you like to have a first round lead bet on Kevin Kisner and things like that. So how receptible are players to the world of gambling, and are they aware of the world of gambling that a lot of people have? And I know DraftKings are now a sponsor of the PGA Tour coverage as well. So what's your whole take on gambling coming into golf? And obviously we love it, but it'd be interesting to hear your take from inside the ropes with the players themselves.
They range from mildly aware to very, 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 very aware based on the player who is out there. And they all know what's going on. It's become more prevalent in recent years. What I've found over the last just couple of years is that if I went to a player in 2018 and said, hey, should we bet on you this week? Who else do you like in the field? If you were betting your money, who are you betting on this week? Whereas a few years ago, it would have been like completely taboo. It would have been like, hey, turn that recorder off and let's walk over here and maybe I'll whisper something in your ear. But for the most part, they were very reticent to do that. Now we have players on our PGA Tour radio show every single week where we say, hey, if you can't bet on yourself this week, we know you like yourself. Who else would you bet on? We had on Aaron Rye the other day from Silverado, making his he was a PGA Tour rookie. Yeah. And we said, hey, who else do you like? And of course he said John Rahm, and he might not be looking at the betting markets necessarily, know what John Rahm's number is, but I think they're all sort of now more in tune with, hey, this is something that people are doing. This is a real thing, and this is drawing more interest to the sport. And this is what the part of it that I like, and the part that I try to preach to people all the time who don't necessarily understand the whole golf betting concept. I said, look, for years, decades, golf has looked to skew a little bit younger. How can we get younger? How can we find a different demographic? How can we get more people involved in watching the sport on a regular basis? Boom, just found it. Let's open up more betting markets to people where they can have a full personal investment. They can have some engagement with the product. And again, this is not about, hey man, I'm going to bet $10,000 on Emiliano Grillo to win this week. It's about, I don't care if you're betting $1, but that dollar means something to you. And all of a sudden you're rooting on that player because your investment is in him for the week. And quite frankly, I say this to people all the time. I played golf with a guy who manages my money today. And I said to him, I'm going to put all my money in golf instead because I know more about golf than the stock market. I'm investing in golfers on a weekly basis. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. I said, okay, I understand that, but I can tell you that I know a whole lot more about who might play well at Silverado or at the Sanderson Farms in a couple of weeks than I know about Apple or IBM or any other company and how they're going to perform in the next quarter. So there is something to be said about what's that?
GameStop goes up and down like a yo-yo.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's the bragging rights for me is what is really satisfying. And also if I can give a tip to someone else. So I had Billy Horschel last week. That was a great winner. But the most satisfying like bet that I've ever done in my entire life was Royal St. George's 2011. The wind is absolutely howling. Darren Clark is hitting these 4-iron stingers 5 feet off the deck and knows how to get this done. And he's 125 to 1. And you are insane if you're not putting, you know, $1 each way, €1 each way, whatever it is. And yeah, so I had a little bit of money on, and that was great, and that was amazing. But was way more satisfying, I had 6, 7, a dozen messages come in on my phone. Oh my God, he won, from guys who don't even like really follow golf. And that was more satisfying for me, is that, hey, I helped you out. Yeah, happy days, enjoy it, you know?
A lot of times it's not about the money. It's funny, back then, and I really didn't bet on guys. I've been in these, you know, one and done pools for a long time and done some DFS here and there. But quite frankly, I worked for ESPN and Golf Channel and back to ESPN for years and years before I came to the Action Network. And like, we weren't allowed to. I mean, we were told, like, you're not allowed to bet on the sport that you cover. Are you kidding me? You can't do it. And so one time a year, I would actually, you know, you go over to the Open and you'd walk into a Ladbrokes and you'd put a little bet down. And so 2011, I walk in there and I said, you know, I want to make a first round leader bet. First round leader, it's always some kind of sentimental guy, maybe someone a little bit older, someone, you know, who's not totally out of it, but, you know, a guy that you could see just throwing up a 65, 66 on the first day. I said, I'm going to go Darren Clark, first round leader. Well, he's 3 back after the first round. He was second round leader, third round leader, and of course led after the final round.
Win, was it?
Classic.
Yeah. I think he got to 5 under.
Yeah.
Back,
didn't cash first round leader bets though.
Yeah.
That's all he didn't do that week.
Maybe, Jason, just to finish up, can I throw a couple? I have 4 quick fire questions for you.
Fire.
And be interested to hear your take on it. So you can have a round of golf with any PGA Tour professional, past or present. Who are you going out for a round of golf with? Put you on the spot here a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit different than the dream foursome question, which I always have a standard answer for.
Yeah, so we're trying to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I know this. Well, my dream foursome answer is always like, I don't know, 3 of my buddies, and we go out there and we have a good time, which I basically do on a regular basis, 2, 3, 4 times a week anyway. Like that's my dream foursome, to hang out with buddies and go play golf. For PGA Tour players, it's. I guess I'm supposed to say something like, man, going to hang out with Jack, Arnie, and Ben Hogan would be a great time. And I'm sure it would be. And I'm sure that, you know, if I didn't pick them and I picked, you know, Kevin Kisner and a few other guys, and we, you know, went out and had 12 beers during a round, that maybe it'd be a little more fun, but I wouldn't be able to talk about it as much. And I wouldn't have as many really cool stories from it. But I like going out there and having fun. And so, yes. Okay. I don't know. I'll answer. Okay. Tiger, Jack, Hogan. I don't know. That's just so cliche.
Come on. Give us one. You're going out for a 2-ball. The sun is setting in the evening and you can pick one PGA, let's say current PGA Tour pro. Who are you calling?
Give me Rory. I absolutely adore everything about Rory. I love the fact I've never even thought about leadership in the capacity of the game of golf until Rory started being a leader a few years ago. And it's changed the way I look at him. It's changed the way I look at the game. I love everything. I find myself in press conferences with Rory McIlroy, just sitting there like a bobblehead, like nodding my head every time he says something, because I agree with him so much. And I love the fact that he's willing to sort of put his opinions out there and put himself on the line. So I've spent a lot of time around Rory. I've never played golf with him, but I think being with Rory would be pretty good. But I might take Jerry. Me and Jerry might take Rory in a match.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. By the way, we talk about like who in golf has like the best life in golf. And we can say, oh, Rory McIlroy, what a life he had. Now, Rory McIlroy has to play golf and he has to make money and he has all the pressure. Jerry McIlroy, now that's where you want to be. He's got a membership at Seminole. He's got a bunch of buddies he plays with. Rory goes to the Ryder Cup. Jerry's front and center. He's got the tickets. He gets to watch. I mean, I'm telling you, that's the life you want to live right there. You want your son to be one of the best players.
Jerry cash his bet. Jerry made a bet in the local bookmaker when Rory's 10 or 11. Yeah. By 25, my son's Open champion. And I think, did he get it done at 24?
Something like that.
Yes.
I think it cashed.
Before he turned 25. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And he did cash it. Yeah.
Do you know what?
Go on, Steve.
Sorry, Donny. You know what we'll do for you, Jason? We'll tag Rory McIlroy in our episode, and we'll say, listen, Jason Sobel wants to play around with Rory McIlroy, any takers, and we'll try and get that. We'll try and get that sorted for you if we
That's
can.
Okay.
Right?
That's okay.
Jason, you know that in Ireland, everybody knows everyone. You know,
exactly.
we all know each other. It's only a small little island, so
yeah.
we'll hook that up. I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you guys see Rory on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Great story for you, by the way. So a few years ago, I lived about 10 minutes away from Bay Hill. So the Arnold Palmer Invitational comes around every year, and I get a million people going, "Hey, you got any extra tickets?" And I'm like, "Guess what? That's not my job. Like, I'm not a ticket broker. I'm going there to cover. I have a credential that's around my neck. I'm not sitting here like dealing out tickets all the time." So I had a friend a couple of years ago, one of my best friends, who said, "Hey, I don't want a ticket. I want to come out and like follow you around and see what you do." I'm like, "All right, that's interesting." I said, "Yeah, why don't you come out with me?" I said, "Here's the deal, though. I don't have a credential for you. I have nothing for you. So I can kind of try to sneak you in, and you can try to sneak out on the golf course with me. At some point, if someone gets wise to it, they're going to kick you off, and I can't really help you." He goes, "All right, fine. I'll jump out and I'll take an Uber home and we'll figure it out." Fine. Okay. He comes out with me, and he comes out very well dressed. He's wearing a polo shirt. He's got pants on and nice loafers, and his hair's brushed nicely, and he's got the nice sunglasses, the expensive sunglasses on. He looks like he kind of belongs somewhere. And so I needed to talk to Rory about something. We're walking up the 6th, 7th hole, something like that, at Bay Hill, and I'm talking to Rory, and we're walking down the fairway together, having a conversation, and I turn around, and my buddy is standing about 6 inches behind us, just grinning ear to ear, this huge smile on his face. And I look back and I go, "Rory, that's my buddy Andrew right there. I have no idea why the hell he's standing 6 inches away from us, but there he is. Don't be alarmed. He's not going to do anything dumb." And he looks at me, he's like, "Hey man, what's up?" And he didn't care, and he just kind of smiled, and that was it. But yeah, Rory's, in any case, that we tell that story all the time, just because my buddy basically snuck on there, and then he's like sneaking down the fairway like he actually belongs. But Rory's the best. I love spending time. I haven't got a chance to do it in a long time, but I really like just speaking with Rory and being around him.
Yeah, I think I would go so far as to say he's the most engaging sports person out there. There's no stock answers. He's very active when he answers questions in press conferences, like even his words about and to Naomi Osaka recently, just really intelligent, really thoughtful guy. Like we obviously love him in this part of the world. And what just the day that he wins his next major, and I do believe it will happen, will be a very, very happy day for us on the podcast.
Yeah, I actually think he's kind of a jerk. I was just pandering to you guys because you're Irish.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Don't worry, we'll mention that in the our message to Rory as well. We'll snip this little bit out. Question 2, Jason. You've an open bar tab for the evening. You've got one PGA Tour professional to come with you for the night. Who you taking out for a night of points?
It might be the same answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can tell this story. I had a European major champion who very nearly made the Ryder Cup team this year. That we hung out a few months ago. It was Sunday night of a major.
Justin
and
Rose.
He had some corporate outings lined up the next day. I'm on the video, you can't see whether I'm shaking my head or nodding my head, so no one will ever know.
Maybe Martin Keimer, Donny. What are we thinking?
Could be Henrik Stenson.
Stenson, yeah.
I don't know Stenson as well as the other guys, but
Stenson would have bought his 3-wood to the pub as well.
Yeah, but I had a very good time having a couple of drinks. I'll put it that way, with this player who I didn't ever expect to be a guy that would come into this answer at all. So I guess the answer to the question is I'd like to have an open bar tab with every single player so I could see which one I'd have the most fun with, because we essentially did that. And there was a player that I didn't think would be nearly close to the top of the list of someone that I would answer for that question, but it was a pretty damn good time.
Nice.
What a political answer that is, Donny, isn't it? It's like
everybody
sit on the
so
fence.
Wonderful.
Yeah, everybody.
No, everybody is, though, sure.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
They're really, I mean, I get asked all the time. It's like some of the first questions I get asked are like, who are the nice guys on the PGA Tour? I'm like, Well, it depends. Are you talking to them after they shoot 66 or 79?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so,
100%.
most of them are nice guys. There are very, very few guys who I don't like. And honestly, most of the guys who I didn't really, Vijay Singh was always very crusty. Vijay Singh was like, you don't even go over there and talk to him because he's, he's mean. And so like those guys are kind of older and they're gone now. And of the guys that are out there now, there's not a player where I sit here right now and say, I don't like that guy. Of the guys who are sort of quote unquote villainous within the public eye, Patrick Reed. I've had great interactions with Patrick Reed. I've done podcasts with Patrick where he's very open and honest and terrific. I have never had a bad interaction with Bryson. Of all the interviews I've had with Bryson, he is very thoughtful and explanatory and engaging. He looks you in the eye. I think Bryson's very good with the media. And so, I think a lot of the guys that the public doesn't necessarily like, maybe if they spend some time around him, they might like him a little bit more.
I think on the Bryson note, I actually think, and I wouldn't say like he's my favorite golfer or anything, but he is not getting the credit that he deserves for how he has transformed his game and transformed his swing. If you can see the plane that he swung at in 2018 compared to now, like any golfer at any level to make those fundamental changes to your body is a huge amount of work. Obviously, it's his full-time job, but it's underappreciated how much hard work he's put in.
I did a piece with him. It was a short piece, and I asked a bunch of other players about this too. But the concept, and this is sort of the motto, the slogan of the Action Network, which is bet on yourself, which is something we all do all the time, whether it's literally or whether it's just sort of, hey, I want to take a leap in my career and do something different, or hey, I'm not sure I want to get married, but I'm going to bet on myself and think that this is going to work out for me. I'm going to buy a house that might be a little more expensive than I think I can afford, but I'm betting on myself. And I think that I'm going to be able to get through it. Bryson essentially was a top 10 golfer in the world. And he took what I consider is about the biggest bet on himself as anybody else in the game of golf, which is I'm top 10 in the world. He could have stayed exactly where he was for the next 15 years and been a very, very good golfer for a very long time. Instead, he said, let's blow up the entire blueprint in hopes that I can be even better and win major championships. For all he knew, Bryson could have gone it disastrously the other way. And he could have fallen out of not just talking about being one of the best players in the world in a Ryder Cup. I mean, he could have been 800th on the world ranking right now. Instead, he bet on himself and it's worked out for him, which I think is very admirable.
Yeah, I agree.
Major champion.
I would have, like, in terms of his longevity in swinging as hard and the torque that he's creating, obviously you're going to look at comparisons to the greatest there's ever been in terms of all the back issues he had. And I hope for Bryson's sake that he's able to adapt his body in a sustainable way, as opposed to get massively jacked, swing like a lunatic for 3-4 years and then have loads of health problems.
I agree with that. I always go back to something that Jason Day said, and he's been saying it for years. And he said, look, I hope I make it to 40 in this game.
Yeah,
I swing very hard and I've got a bad back and I hope I get there. And, he's struggled, of course, over the last couple of years, but it's funny. We never talk about that in other sports. We never look at a soccer player who, puts his body on the line and is diving all over the place. It's like, boy, what about his longevity though? I don't know if he's going to be able to play till he's 40 something years old. We never look at an American football player and say, well, that guy's, he's flying across the middle and he's taking hard tackles. What about his longevity? In golf, we seem to always bring up longevity as if it's a big detriment if you don't get there. These guys make so much money that if I'm Bryson, if I'm Jason Day, if I'm any of these players, let me play the best golf that I possibly can for as long as I can. And if I turn 38 years old, 40, 42 years old, and I can't do it anymore, I go, all right, well, I've maxed out my earning potential and now I can move on to something else.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. From my perspective, I suppose it could be the difference between, okay, I've got 15 chances to win a green jacket, or I've got, potentially 30 chances to win a green jacket.
Yeah, but maybe you'd rather have 15 great chances than 30 good chances.
That's true too. Yeah, I don't think you want to be Sandy Lyle the last 10 years or so. I mean, I'm sure he has a great time. And
leave Sandy alone, Donnie.
No, that's not a criticism. He was still shooting numbers in the 70s, but basically a chastising experience.
Absolutely. Last two questions then, Jason. So you've got one course to play. You can get an unlimited membership, unlimited chances to play. What course are you choosing?
West Orange Country Club in Winter Garden, Florida.
Google.
Yeah,
exactly. To Google.
My home
Can't
club. There's no tee times. I can show up there any day, and anywhere between 3 and 74 of my buddies are sitting on the back patio, and I can go, you, and you. Let's go. We'll take on him, and him. And we have E9s, emergency nines, where we might have 18 carts out there at the same time. I always say to people, I go, honestly, if I won the lottery, which I don't play, but somehow won the lottery, I'm still showing up there for the Friday game every week. Okay, I might hop on a plane on Saturday and go play Augusta or something like that, but I'm still showing up to my own course, because to me, golf is less about it. Actually, my buddy Carl Paulson, who I do radio with, put this on Twitter about a week ago. Would you rather play an average golf course with really good friends all the time for the rest of your life, or really good golf courses with people you don't know? And to me, that's not even a question. I'd rather play with my friends on an average golf course, and ours is it's an average course. I mean, it's I like it. It's nice, but it's certainly not anything that's going to host a major anytime soon. But that's where all my friends are, and I want to play golf with my friends. And so, would I take a day at Augusta, a day at Bandon Dunes, a day at Pine Valley? Of course I would. But if you said, hey, you have to go there for the rest of your life, and you play by yourself or play with people you don't know every single day, and you never meet anybody, to me, that's no fun. This game's about fun. So me and my guys.
I couldn't agree more. The only thing I'd change is I wouldn't like to play with my friends. I'd like to beat them, and beat them consistently.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
That's a standard.
My co-host on radio, Michael Collins, we were talking about this yesterday, because I had just come off the golf course yesterday, and we start the show, and I said, just off the golf course, man, me and my buddy got our butts kicked. We played. He goes, we lost 4 ways and a couple of presses. And he goes, man, I played the other day. I played with a friend. It was a beautiful day. We had a drink. We didn't even play for anything. I go, what's the point? He said, well, look at it from your perspective. You didn't even say anything else about the round other than you lost money. I said, fine. Okay, here you go. I played with 3 idiots, and I had a moderate amount of fun, and I lost money. Is that better? I gave you something before the whole gambling aspect of it, but it's you're playing for money, please. I mean, every single
sounds
time.
like my Sunday. Sounds like my Sunday, Jason. Losing money, playing with 3 idiots, classic. You know what I mean? And the very last question I have for you: are you Team Brooks or are you Team Bryson?
Whoa. I have more empathy for Bryson than I think a lot of other people do.
That's a great answer.
Brooks has been.
That's what I'm hearing.
Brooks has been the bully in this situation, and Bryson really hasn't done anything to deserve any of this other than just being himself. Yep. And so, I mean, we tell people all the time. I have 2 kids. I'm not sure we've really given the bullying speech, because I don't think they're bullying anybody. But it's bullying is wrong, and no one ever remembers growing up and in school there was some kid in class who'd steal your lunch or push you down on the swing set, and no one likes that. And so I feel like Brooks has bullied Bryson a little bit. And so look, I am not in favor of everything that Bryson has said and done. And he's done a lot wrong over the last handful of months, but I don't think that he's gotten into that situation for the wrong reasons. I don't think he did anything to warrant sort of all this vitriol geared towards him. And I do think Brooks has been a little bit of a bully, but then again, look, it gets us talking about it, gets them pip money. Who knows? Maybe the whole thing's a grift.
Yeah, because you do end up asking the question, well, is this all a ruse? And I don't personally think it is. My take on it is Brooks has had several opportunities to nip it in the bud, like really like open goals to just go, listen, this got out of hand. This was a bit of fun, and then he's got the Team Brooks caps, and then just in several instances he could have nipped it in the bud and decided not to. And I just think that doesn't show him in a great light. Put it that way.
So this started at, of course, Kiowa, where Bryson was walking past Brooks. I was standing 10 feet away. I didn't turn around and really pay attention, but Todd Lewis came over. I was doing interviews for Sirius XM. Todd was doing the interviews for Golf Channel, of course. And Todd came over a few minutes later, goes, man, you should have seen this. It was crazy. And of course, the video gets released somehow a few days later, and all hell breaks loose. But of course, the video is Brooks or Bryson walking past in the background of Brooks, and Brooks kind of rolling his eyes, and Bryson talking about, man, I thought I hit it perfect. And so, if you recall, about a month later at the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, it's the same exact situation. Brooks is doing an interview with Todd Lewis of Golf Channel. Bryson's walking in the background, and Bryson jumps up in the background and just starts waving back and forth. And I thought that was awesome. And so I found Bryson later that day, and I said, what was with the wave? I mean, everyone's kind of talking about it. So he goes, man, I'm just trying to have some fun with this thing. I don't know. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm like, I love that perspective. I think a lot of other players in that situation would have seen Brooks doing an interview and said, all right, we got to walk around the other way. We can't go behind him because it's going to cause all this stuff. Bryson's like, hi, everybody. And I don't know. I thought that was really cool the way he handled it.
I like it. But it sounds of it, Jason, Todd Lewis is to blame for all of this. I think Todd Lewis is the real.
I am totally on board with that.
Yeah, let's start that.
Give Todd Lewis the 40 million. Give him the PIP. It's his.
Exactly.
It's the last thing that guy needs.
Do you know what, Jason?
Apparently, I just missed him at the course today too, where I was playing. He was there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, I missed him. I'll have to see enough of him next week.
I thought that would be a no comment answer, Jason. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your answers. It's been an absolute blast, and we'd love to get you back on maybe to review the Ryder Cup the week after next if you have a couple of spare minutes.
Yeah. Well, you're going to ask me live on the podcast. I'm going to come back. It's hard for me to go like, no, sorry, I'm done with you guys. So yes, I'd love to. Sounds great.
No, genuinely, Jason.
I sound like a complete jerk if at the end of the pod I'm just like, no, screw you guys.
Do you know what? It's 1 a.m. It's just coming up to 1 a.m. over my time over here in Liverpool. But I'm now wide awake because I've had an absolute blast. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you. We really, really appreciate it. And we're so jealous you're at Whistling Straits next week. I know you're working, but surely the 12-year-old kid inside of you is pretty gleeful at watching 24 the best go toe to toe.
You know what it's going to be? It's not the 12-year-old kid, it's the 21-year-old kid in me, because I'm staying in a house next week. We just got our assignment with Carl Paulson, who I mentioned before, and Dennis Paulson, no relation, but they do their radio show together with Colt Knost and Drew Stoltz. The five of us are in a house together.
Awesome.
Someone's not making it out of that house.
A couple of points.
Just a couple, just to keep the edge off just a little bit. So, it doesn't become too tenuous, but I'm not too worried about the camaraderie in the team room there. It's those are the things that I look forward to. I mean, for as much as, and I don't mean to take it for granted. And I love the fact that, I'm going to be probably standing on the first tee when these guys tee off on Friday morning this coming week. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have goosebumps and I can't wait to be there. It's going to be really cool, but being able to do that kind of stuff with guys that you've become friends with, and you're able to have that kind of fun on the road as opposed to just working the whole time. That's the kind of stuff that I look forward to as well.
Told you that'd be fun. Thanks again to Jason, an absolute gentleman, and we really hope to get him on the podcast again in the near future. Thanks again for listening. We really, really appreciate it. We are going to be all over the Ryder Cup over the next week or two. We've got more guests coming up. We've got a preview show next week. We're definitely going after some profitability within that. So please give us a follow on Twitter. We're Finders Fairway on Twitter. We're the Fairway Finders pod on Instagram. Also, if you're not following Jason Sobel for the Ryder Cup next week, what are you doing? At Jason Sobel, ITAN, on Twitter. Get all over it. And we will see you next week.
Just take a moment to admire the fact I just hit a fairway.
There's only two things that can happen. You can hit a good shot or a bad shot. So why waste time doing it?
And wherever I set course records or whatever, I would be barefooted, drunk, playing golf, making every 20-footer I looked at.
Right at it. Right at it! Oh, Jordan He's done it again!
This is the dumbest hole I've ever played in my life.
Come on then, Shane. Knock it close.
Shane Lowry is the Open champion.